I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get online, and kiss my ass.
Now is the moment. As we recover from this crisis, now is the moment to put in place the long-term plan to build back America better. A plan that will increase opportunities with better jobs and with higher wages. A plan that will lower the everyday costs that strain our budgets and our nation's families today and long into the future. It starts with making investments that we know will make the economy more productive and lead to more growth over the long run. Bringing down the cost, everyday costs, that have been taking a bigger and bigger bite out of middle-class families' incomes. The expenses that keep parents up at night and rob seniors of their dignity. Health care, prescription drug costs, child care, education, housing, or caring for an elderly relative or a loved one. As we recover from this crisis, now is the moment to put in place the long-term plan to build back America better. A plan that will increase opportunities with better jobs and with higher wages. A plan that will lower the everyday costs that strain our budgets and our nation's families today.
Has everybody heard enough?
Been listening to it for 25 years.
I hear the plan, yeah.
It's the same old song.
Except this time it might pass.
Is it though?
I think
Is it though? Is it really the same old song? I mean, can we deep dive into this for 10 minutes? Because I've got things to say about it.
Oh, we got lots to say about that. So, no representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than the legal services provided by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele. You found the Backstory Podcast. We have Mr. Ripp from the Ripp Report with us in studio today.
I am happy to be here in COVID la-la land.
And Mr. Russian, you guys are out of hospital beds, I hear, in Houston.
Well, just like everywhere else, we're out of hospital beds, but at least our elected officials are taking definitive action to help stop the spread, and because the citizenry won't. So they're doing what they got to do. I'm happy for it. We're observing COVID protocols here. My son's masking up when he goes to school, whether they like it or not. And did I mention it's hot?
Yeah. Everywhere.
So the Taliban, while you were sleeping, Rains, the Taliban seized half the freaking country. Did you see was it Kandahar, where all those people were riding around on that damn Humvee? I sure am glad we left that so they could ride around on it.
All of you that don't remember Vietnam, all you have to do is watch this. The same thing that happened, exactly like this, is exactly what happened. And God forbid the number of lives are going to be lost in the next 6 weeks to 3 months.
So Monday, I heard we were sending 3,000 troops.
Right.
And this is the latest report. We're sending 8,000 troops.
8,000 is not security.
I sure hope they don't have any of those Sidewinders left. We gave them in the 80s.
Oh, they've captured tremendous amount of inventory that we're going to have to leave.
3 infantry battalions are on their way to the Kabul airport. Go for it.
Let's talk about that for just a second. I mean, and Paul's got Paul had at least a fourth row seat to what happened in 1973 in Vietnam. And there's a man, and I remember watching his interview and watched him speak in person once. And I apologize that I can't remember his full name, but he was a master sergeant, a Marine master sergeant, and he was the NCO in command of the Marine security detachment at the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. And he is, according to the military, not according to some people we know, but according to the United States Military Department of Defense, the last American service person in Vietnam. He was the last one on the last chopper to leave, evacuating the U.S. Embassy in Saigon. We're going to see an adult diaper on here. We're going to see a similar situation in Afghanistan, because as we have said, as I personally have said since we invaded Afghanistan, it's going to be our next Vietnam, because it was Soviets' Vietnam, it was the British Vietnam, it was everybody's. Afghanistan's the graveyard of an empire. If you haven't read it, There's a fantastic novel out there called The Kite Runner. It's by an author named Khaled Hosseini. And he talks about growing up in Afghanistan before the Soviet invasion and before the beards, as he called it.
Before the literacy rate went to 10%.
Right. And his father was a very big-time businessman in Kabul. And his father made this incredible quote. He said, everything is going to go to shit as soon as the beards take over. And what he was talking about were the fundamentalist Islamic, that with the religious government folks, the theocrats, who were going to take over. And sure enough, it did.
Who've been
And
hiding
just
right
like
across the
everything else-
border for 20 years in Pakistan.
Right. Right. You can't allow a theocratic government to take over, or this is what's going to happen. And I fault the U.S. State Department. I fault U.S. foreign policy. I, for one, and I'm going to stand here, and I don't care who says I told you so, I fault Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for a lot of this. And I'm telling you right now, the U.S. foreign policy in Afghanistan has been a failure since day one. And this is not something that should surprise anyone. This was and is the critical inevitability to failure of U.S. foreign policy.
Right.
So this is a Terry Gross. It's 42 minutes long, so I'm not going to beat the horse again. But anyway, if you have a minute, NPR did a pretty good piece on it back in March. And here you see President Trump. Remember that surprise Thanksgiving trip he made?
Right.
And then in re-election bid, Trump pushes Afghan troop withdrawal to meet campaign promise. And so this is all a culmination of terrible foreign policy by Trump. Now remember, was it May of 2019? He cut a deal with the Taliban. And he said, if you don't kill any more American forces, we'll leave next May. So they just started cutting off every woman's head that was walking around without a scarf on.
Let me say something. Let me go on record here. And boys, mark the calendar. Today is the 13th of August, 2021. I'm going to say something I've never said before. But this wasn't Trump's fault.
True.
No, he inherited
This was
it.
absolutely not the fault of the last president. Anytime you pull out U.S. troops from a military occupation, there's going to be a vacuum, and the powers that be are going to fill that vacuum. We cannot, as a nation, we are not an imperialist nation, despite what everyone thinks, we could not garrison the country of Afghanistan for eternity.
$2 trillion.
The Afghan government has to stand on their own 2 feet. We could not garrison South Vietnam permanently.
Well, we did
comes a point
Germany.
where you can't do it anymore. And what happens is the enemy wins. So, we go to 7-2 on the great scale so Senator Tubberville can understand. We're 7-2 and 3-0 in division play.
Well, the one thing that Harry mentioned a minute ago, the first amount of troops listed to go was 3,000. Okay, I can see 3,000 being stationed at the Kabul airport. But now you're talking about 8,000. 8,000's an invasion force. That's not...
Actually, let me give you some perspective on that, Paul, because this is something that I study in my spare time. The 8,000 troops that are deploying to secure from Kabul are not deploying from the United States.
Right.
They're redeploying from strategic locations in Afghanistan to defend the evacuation. That doesn't mean we've got fresh boots coming in from Kentucky. That means that people are coming in from Peshawar, people are coming in from the lower Kandahar, people are coming, we've got service people coming in from all over the country to basically form a defensive perimeter around the airport in Kabul to be able to get the last person out.
And the Taliban will probably be extremely patient and just keep shrinking the noose around the capital and leave the airport alone, leave them all alone, and just wait till the last day and they get on the plane. And then they'll walk in.
That's probably right, because people think that the Taliban is just a bunch of crazies, but they are militarily led. And the question is, what would you do?
I would terrorize them from the air.
What would you do if you were the Taliban? I mean,
exactly.
It's an insurgency. What do you mean? What do you do?
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, from a military point of view, if you were going to take over a country that the military occupation force is leaving, how would you do it? That's how they're going to do it.
Sure.
That's exactly how
they'll win the will. They'll win the will.
Right.
So in just a few minutes, the 117th Congress is going to convene, the Senate, and whittle on this bipartisan infrastructure bill. I don't know how bipartisan it is, but anyhow.
That they've been talking about now for 25 years.
Okay, we haven't talked about crypto, but we're going to do a crypto. You better bone up, buddy, because we're going to do a crypto-only podcast one day, maybe a solo or something, me and you, and talk about crypto, talk about what's going on, how some people see it as hearkening back to the Jeffersonian days of wanting to fight the banks, and this is how this is how some people are doing it.
Well, it's partially the banks. This is a reaction to the bad banks.
Of course.
That's exactly what this is.
And fiat currency. Thanks, Nixon.
Banks have gone, in the last 10, 15 years, banks don't even resemble what we call banks before.
So anyway, Shelby had fouled this thing up a few days ago, and as far as I know, the big problem with this is collecting the tax and who is a broker. That's the problem in the legislation. And
let me give you some insight on that.
Go for it.
If you want to see how this is going to go down in the first round, initially this is going to be killed in the first round, and it's going to have to be decided by the courts. If you give me 2 minutes, in France, and now the entire EU follows it, France passed a law about what's called loot boxes. And in video games, there are loot boxes that are present. And if you play a video game like, say, Fortnite in France, usually you can do what's called microtransactions, where you can buy for currency, you can buy a loot box, and that loot box opens up and you get a skin, or you get a lot of credits for the game, or you get it's kind of a little mystery box.
New weapon.
Right, a new weapon, a unique armor, or something like that. Well, the EU adopted a law that effectively banned loot boxes. And they said you cannot have loot boxes because those are financial transactions, and there is no way for us to tax them. And they tried to pass a law, and of course the law didn't fly in France, and the French courts got a hold of it and said, if we can't tax it, you can't spend money on it. And therefore they're outlawed, just like any other non-regulated thing. It's going to have to go to the courts here in the United States, and I see a similar situation where they're going to try to push crypto underground.
Okay, well, you remember how we got the Affordable Care Act, right? They declared it a tax. So they will have no problem figuring out some way to tax crypto. Believe me.
They'll try to find a way to tax it, but the people that are involved in crypto, the main brokers, the miners, etc., it's just going to drive it further underground. And as we've learned in this country, prohibition on anything doesn't lead to anything but crime. So it's going to drive crypto further underground, and it's going to once again become the currency of the illegal market.
Yeah, they might find a way to tax it, but then they got to figure out a way to collect it.
I'm going to stick with very, very slightly imperfect diamonds. Yeah. I'll stick with diamonds. You guys can play crypto. So guess what today is?
13th.
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th. And in regular fashion, I guess we'll go right into the butcher's bill. SARS-CoV-2, the Delta variant, is rampant. This is last week and this week. See what's happening?
Mobile's through the roof.
Spiraling out. Now Monroe County is so last week, this week.
Mm-hmm.
The number of coronavirus cases in Alabama tops 4,000, and one county sees an increase of more than 600 cases overnight.
They closed the WAL-MARKS.
Yeah, we're getting
that text alert this morning.
Alabama Governor Kay continues to urge vaccinations as COVID cases explode on Alabama's Gulf Coast. Now, she was down here for a ribbon cutting at the new Alta Point Crisis Center in Mobile, mental health care.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, while we have a huge spike in this Delta variant, every kid in Baldwin County went back to school on Wednesday. How many of them you think will come home with the coronavirus and giving it to mom and daddy?
Who, I don't know.
I would say
get
large
vaccinated.
percentage.
So just 2 days into its school year, a Florida county has 440 students in quarantine after 51 students and staff tested positive for COVID.
Wow.
I would imagine in a place like Baldwin County where people are screaming, "You can't make my kids wear a mask." I got a feeling we're going to have something just like that. I'm going to predict an explosion of coronavirus next week.
I'm praying to God you're wrong, but I think you may be right.
Friday the 13th. You never know what could happen.
That's right.
So Mobile area is the epicenter. Steve Marshall says businesses can require employees to get vaccinations. Here's a little interesting tidbit. So Baldwin County tenants failed to claim COVID aid and housing protection.
That's lanyap with Gabe Times.
Yep. Infirmary health officials give update on COVID-19 crisis, ask for prayers and vaccinations.
And this is the officials asking people, please get vaccinated. They're the ones bearing the brunt of this.
For the third time since the pandemic began, Infirmary Health has the largest number of COVID-19 patients in the state across its 3 hospitals. This is a grim milestone. A wildfire. All these business temporarily closed. Loxley Municipal Court. This business owner, Silver Hill. Requirements for people. Here's where you were going, Ray. Saraland and Fairhope Walmart both closed. And it's because they don't have staff.
Well, this is the
Everybody's
COVID
sick.
thing, but we talked about the mega site. You could never get that mega site open at this time. You can't even find employees for Walmart.
So negative COVID test or proof of vaccination required for Hangout Fest. That's going to be October this year.
Well,
Drug Fest.
That's where we're going. It's going to be, you're going to have to be vaccinated or you're not going to be able to go any damn where.
New Orleans
here's the thing.
Jazz and Heritage Fest canceled.
The Jazz Festival canceled, and I'm going to tell you why. It's not because they think, well, we could go with a positive COVID test, or a negative COVID test, or we could go with a vaccine card to get you in. I spoke to someone involved deeply with Jazz Fest, and you know what their explanation was to me? They said, we've got people working the gate that are making $10 an hour, and that's the high end of what we can pay them. There's many gates to get in Jazz Fest. How many of them are going to be experts on what a COVID vaccination card looks like? How many of them are going to be experts on forged documents?
They can't even spot a fake ID.
Yeah,
I've worked in the bar business for 25 years, and there's still being IDs made that can get past me. I'm telling you, you cannot effectively police this. I mean, I've been to places that say, oh, let's put the wand up to your head. A girl at a doctor's office put it up to my head and go, oh, your body temperature is only 94.4 degrees. You don't have COVID, go right in. I'm like, if my body temperature was 94.4 degrees, I'd have hypothermia and be on the verge of death.
Right.
You don't know how to read this stuff. You just know that it doesn't say this.
So
That's really the crux of the festival thing. You're not going to be able to effectively test and watch documents for 50,000 people. It's just not doable.
Okay, well,
unless you just have a cadre of inspectors, and you're not going to make any money if you do that. So why have it at all?
So, well, it's social pressure, it's peer pressure. There, New Orleans is saying you have to have either of this proof or a recent negative COVID test to go into a restaurant, bar, music hall, or any other inside venue.
Who's enforcing that? They don't have NOPD cops. They don't have.
Like
they
I
don't
said,
have,
people don't. People will go get it just so they won't be harassed. People will get it just so they won't be harassed and so they can go about their business.
And I admire that theory. I really do. And I hope that especially in a city like New Orleans, I can tell you right now, that's a big play. Because there's people that eat at Mosca's every Thursday night, and they don't want to be turned away because they don't have their documentation correct. Because that's a huge mark. That'll put you down a rung on the social ladder. So I think in New Orleans, it's perfect. In Mobile, don't nobody give a shit. There's like 60 people that are still involved in the cotillion over there, and they're the ones that are, clutch my pearls. I can't get into the country club to drink this evening.
I like a good cotillion. So the FDA authorizes COVID-19 vaccine boosters for immunocompromised patients. So that's the next big one is we all need to get in line for a booster. 36.3 million infected in the U.S. with 619,341 deaths.
At least the deaths have slowed down.
So here's what I was getting to. U.S. Senate hopeful Katie Britt decries political volleyball aspect of COVID pandemic. Start talking truth instead of talking fears.
There you go.
And this dovetails into Jeff Poor's Beltway beat this week. Politics poisoning the well on COVID-19.
And that is...
Great job being ahead of the game on that one, Poor. Good job. It only took you 12 months to write that article. Fantastic work.
That's exactly what happened in Fairhope. They made it a political football in the very, very beginning and just completely ignored the health risk.
Brother, that's what happened in Washington. That's what happened across this entire country.
True.
So,
here we go.
Yeah, this article's not out yet. I tried to go to the Alabama Political Reporter. I guess he's writing it. This was just a tweet. And so now that they weren't able to get financing for prisons, we're still on the hook to pay this company between $4 and $6 million for the physical work that they did.
Are you serious?
Yes, sir. Just
When
wait.
did
That
that
article will
come
be
out?
out Sunday, I bet. That's a Sunday enterprise, buddy. That'll be front page Sunday.
You heard it
Sunday
here
paper.
first, or saw it on Twitter first.
My God.
And of course, I want to go back to Governor Ivey being down here and saying we all need to get vaccinated. And by the way, school starts tomorrow. Nothing we can do except let all the kids get together and take the COVID home. So she was there to cut a ribbon on a mental health facility in Mobile, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Paul, I just want you to take this in for a second and think about what happened to this man's son. So, Colonel Andy Pears watched his son, who's an Afghan war veteran with PTSD, Jonathan Pears, be shot by Elmore County deputies. His father was on the ground in handcuffs, and they shot him from more than 70 feet away. Of course, he was wielding a machete, and of course, the father says they shot to kill, and that's exactly what they did.
That's what they're trying to do. 70 feet away. No non-lethal weapons, nothing else. He's got a machete. Oh, well, shoot him.
He didn't comply. That's when you get killed. When you don't do what the deputy says, they, fill you full of bullets. Another thing to get me...
over and over again. This happened in Baldwin County 4 or 5 times, and it's investigated by the select team that investigates themselves.
Well, I can tell you, this guy ain't going to let it go.
Good.
Colonel Pears, we might get him on here to talk to us.
Okay.
So the judge is set to begin a key hearing in the Boy Scout bankruptcy case. I don't know if y'all know how this goes, but they come in and they say, look, we got X amount of money. We got a bunch of people with claims, and we need to figure out exactly how we disperse all these funds.
That's what they did on the termite case. They're mailing checks everywhere.
And as Raines can tell you, they are selling off all of their cherry assets or mortgaging them to pay for this. And I don't know how in the hell the Boy Scouts are going to survive without camps.
They should just bankrupt and start over.
So another news story out of NOLA, a prolific narcotics agent known as the White Devil among drug traffickers was sentenced Thursday to more than 13 years behind bars for stealing money from suspects, falsifying government records, and committing perjury during a federal trial.
He ought to do real well in jail.
I promise you he'll do well. Ex-Montgomery assistant principal gets 5 years in prison for $315,000 school district scam. So he had a consulting company where he was being paid by the board that he worked for. Can you imagine that, Paul?
Now, wait a minute. This was a federal case, huh?
Hell yeah. I said he was going to prison. I didn't say...
that's right.
That's
Steve Marshall played golf with him the Saturday before.
That's what Mr. Albrecht needs is a federal case.
The reason it's a federal case is because he took PPE money, and that's the biggest part of it. And not that I would say that there's other consulting firms out there that have wrongfully taken federal money.
Never. So, do y'all remember the fish kill that I told you about? Tyson Foods had a lagoon full of chicken waste.
Right.
That the dam broke and it killed, 200,000 fish in Mulberry Fork? Well, they've worked out a deal. Of course, no one's going to get in any trouble. They're just going to have to pay some money. And I don't know how money does anything for that tributary.
$3 million.
What a joke.
Right.
So talk about another joke. Do you know who Patricia Todd is? She's a former representative from Birmingham.
Democrat, right?
She's a Democrat. But what she brought up was, while I was in the legislature, we did a lot of incentives for industries, and we never got any report saying that they actually made the, $40 million in capital investment and hired 500 employees at $16 an hour.
Yeah.
She's saying there's no accountability
like
for
the
that.
Baldwin County Economic Development Alliance, where they handed out the money. Has anybody been accountable there? Absolutely not.
So, you know how everybody's about 2 weeks behind us.
Just an interesting little piece of a little piece of political forensics there. You often hear people referred to as the honorable so-and-so.
Yeah.
Let me explain just real quick so our viewers and listeners can understand this. Patricia Todd is now the Honorable Patricia Todd because she is no longer a serving member of the Assembly. She's the human rights. She's the chair of the human rights campaign of the state of Alabama because she's the first openly gay person elected in the state. Whenever a person is serving, they are Representative Cory Booker or Representative Dan Crenshaw or Senator Ted Cruz. When they're out of office, because they served a successful term, they are then referred to as the Honorable so-and-so. So we can refer to her as the Honorable Patricia Todd, not Representative Patricia Todd.
Okay.
So do you remember 2 podcasts ago I told you guys about this case?
Right.
Where they're seeking a gag order.
It's on the soccer player, right?
Spring Hill College soccer player. What's his name? Vasil Kalaki.
That's a good guess.
Anyway,
Vasil
Kokali. Vasil Kokali. I think he's Italian. And we are objecting as a gag order is an extraordinary request that is not supported by case law and should not be granted. And, of course, this is Megan Doggett, who the prosecutor said potentially violated rules of professional responsibility by telling the news folks that her client had passed a lie detector test.
Typical strategy. Typical strategy.
So, I really like Horatio Sands, man. He's accused of grooming teens for sex while at SNL.
One teen. There's a single Jane Doe in the county.
Single. Okay, well.
I mean, it is what it is, and like I say to everything else, let's investigate it. Let the powers that be, let the grand jury look at it. And if it's something, it's something. If not, it's just another Matt Gaetz job fair.
Right. Bye-bye, Daddy.
So Britney is freed.
Bye-bye,
her father
Daddy.
is to relinquish control of her conservatorship.
She's not free yet. He just steps down as the head of her conservatorship. She's still under a conservatorship.
Who's going to be the conservator?
Right.
How come she has to have one?
Because she's crazy, dude. She was posting topless pictures. She's like, I want this conservatorship to be over with, and she posted a bunch of risque photos on, I think it was
That's
Instagram.
not why Britney Spears was under conservatorship.
No, it was because she shaved her head and tried to beat people's ass with an
She had a
umbrella.
nervous breakdown, and she basically got Baker acted.
Well, how
and
long?
they kept
How
it
long
going.
do you stay under that?
Yes, until you're better. So, hey, did you guys know there's another laptop?
Oh, Lord. We got a picture here. Blocked out one person and no head on another.
Well, I think that's Hunter Biden over on the
Oh,
right.
how do you
and
think?
that appears to be a female on the left.
I was going to say you got one person.
They block out her face, Paul. Take a close look.
That's
at
not
that.
her
Get your
face.
glasses on. That ain't her face they blocked out.
Oh, I thought that was her face.
Maybe that's the kind of women you run around with.
Yeah, block out the face, huh?
So the Jeffrey Epstein saga seems to have another casualty. So can you? I guess you can. There is the royal family sovereign in their own country?
No.
Are they immune from prosecution?
They're not.
They're not.
No,
They're subject to the same
All went
laws.
away with the Magna Carta.
Yeah, we know somebody that had something to do with that. So,
Yeah. Well, the thing is that you could sue anybody in the royal family, but you can't sue the queen. You can't sue the ruling monarch has sovereign immunity, but the members of the royal family, even up into including the direct lineage, is liable for civil damages under English common law.
I bet Prince Andrew wishes he never met Jeffrey Epstein.
you think?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, I bet Jeffrey Epstein wishes he never met Prince Andrew.
Exactly.
He might
Well,
be
because
alive.
if there's, you know, I love spy movies and things like that, but all bullshit aside, if the British government wants you dead,
You're dead.
I got a feeling that being in a maximum security prison in Manhattan is no. What's the Governor Ivy say?
Yeah.
Them high steppers. So another guy I like. Have you seen that turd of a movie, The Suicide Squad, the one that just came out?
Nope.
Well, it had Idris Elba in it, who's one of my favorite actors, and this guy's one of my favorite actors too. And apparently, he's under investigation for rape. Remember, he was RoboCop in the newest RoboCop, and there there was a Netflix show. I believe he's Canadian, and Altered Carbon, several movies, series that I like that he was in.
I like Altered Carbon.
You know, you just wondered. I mean, rape is a violent act, and anyway. We'll let that shake out. So, you guys remember last week I told you about Josh Moon broke a story about a watchdog group saying that Tubberville failed to notify the Senate under ethics rules that he had traded some $3.5 million worth of stock. And it turns out Rand Paul failed to disclose his wife's purchase of COVID-19 drug maker share. Same thing.
Bit dog barks first.
All right, Paul.
Yeah.
Give me some lanyap stuff, man.
Stuck for bucks. That's City of Fairhope approves vaccine incentives by Gabe Times. This is a very good example of how politics took over COVID when those of you that remember in Fairhope, the last election was right as COVID was getting started. And the city council and then candidate Sherry Sullivan made a big thing about Mayor Wilson's canceling the arts and crafts show and taking certain precautions because of COVID. And so after the election, it became even more political in the fact that now they had to stand up for what they insinuated in the beginning. So the whole situation just gets even worse. Now they're faced with like 30 or 40 people off from work. They can't get their work done.
City employees out sick.
Right.
35 as far as I know.
That which is probably a little bit more than 10% of what they do have. And if you remember, it was Mayor Wilson that canceled the Arts and Crafts Show and did what was supposed to be done. Since the leadership has changed, it is a whole different story. One of the things that has happened is that the American Rescue Plan, which was approved by Congress earlier this year, has provided money to municipalities to compensate employees affected by the pandemic. In May, City of Fairhope awarded its full-time employees $500 for working through the pandemic, but with proof of vaccination, they are now eligible for $500 more. Part-time employees who get vaccinated may receive $250, and seasonal employees will receive $125. This is absolutely, totally, 100% different than what they were professing in the beginning. If you remember, the mayor and especially Council President Jack Burrell talking about, oh, well, we're not going to accept federal funds and we're not going to do this with federal money, this and that. In fact, Mr. Burrell went even so far as to say that he wasn't going to accept any federal funds from the for the Bay Bridge. And then he had to backtrack on that real quick because he could build it without federal funds. Anyway, there were two different people that spoke at the meeting, both Stephanie Durham and Stephanie Hannon, and they were echoing what the city council and the mayor's previous statements were. And so now they're in the council lecturing the council on what they had already said. Early in the meeting, Stephanie Durham said that she was disappointed to see the item on the agenda, and approval indicates the council lacks fiscal conservatism. Now, that is something that Jack Burrell especially brags about all of the time. Incentivizing a vaccination with our taxpayer funds is unconscionable and will cost a fortune, she said. It doesn't matter that the money came from the federal government. Where do you think they got the money from? It is not the place of government to rain money on those who participated in a voluntary medical procedure. That is the position of the council and mayor, but they changed their mind after they got federal money. Now they got to spend the money. Another resident, Stephanie Hannon, said the resolution was wrong, bordering on coercion, tantamount to bribery. She came armed with facts and data gathered about the pandemic, suggesting the incentive may cause a rift between employees and advising caution regarding unapproved vaccines. The emergency use of COVID-19 vaccine comes with known and unknown risks, she said. Should our city employees be injured during taking your offer and submitting to an experimental vaccines, what will be your response then? This is all brought on by the leadership of Fairhope. Now they got themselves in a mess, and I don't know if it's going to get any better or any worse, but you can go and read Pandemic of the Unvaccinated. That's Freaky Friday this week with the ripreport.com.
Okay,
now,
hang on, Paul.
Go ahead.
I gotta speak in on this.
All right.
This is going to sound very contrarian, but I'm going to speak to the law. I don't agree with any municipal or county or state or federal government incentivizing health care for employees like this.
I agree.
There was a mayor in New Jersey that he didn't say, hey, I'm going to give $100 to everybody that's going to get vaccinated. He got out in the street with a megaphone and basically went street by street through his entire city saying, hey, get vaccinated. I'm more in support of clown behavior like that than I am of saying that a government should spend taxpayer money to say, hey, here's $100 if you get the shot. Because I don't believe the government should incentivize with cash anything, because we've got enough inflation as it is.
Fairhope.
And if you're I'm saying, you know what, if you're an employee for us, we'll give you $100 to get the vaccine. No. If you want to mandate that you have to have it as a private business to be able to come to work, that's one thing. If you want to give your employees a $5,000 bonus for getting the shot as a new company, that's another thing. You can do that. But I don't want my federal tax dollars being dangled as a carrot in front of idiots saying, I'll give you $100 if you just get this shot. And because I don't want to see a precedent set that says, hey, you know what? If you show up to the city council meeting and support this issue, I'll give you $100 because it opens the door for that.
Absolutely.
Right.
And so I vehemently do not support it.
Right. Well, listen,
Killers.
The reason they're doing it, and this is the same thing they do with grants that they get and stuff like that, is federal money. They got to spend it. That's the mentality of it.
It's hard for me to say this, and I know, Paul, it's not going to be hard for you to hear it, but maybe they ought to be a little smarter about how they spend federal money.
Yeah.
But then again, it is Fairhope.
It's Fairhope.
Really. Also in Lagniappe coming soon, the Planning Commission approves the Malves apartment complex. Those of you that have been following that, it's an article by Gabe Times in Lagniappe. And there was no doubt it was going to be approved. It was, a push and pull thing, but it was going to be approved. They're approving these things all over the county. You're not seeing anything that's not approved. Yeah.
This would have had to have been approved by Spanish Fort, but because of the Taxman's new bill,
right,
it's now under county control. And I don't know how many people in Historic Malbis that own a $450,000 house are going to enjoy how many 288 apartment units. I wish I had my I wish I could do some quick calculations, but just imagine the trips per day past this house right here going to those apartments.
Right.
I mean, it is the most asinine plan I've ever heard of.
Well, you're seeing that everywhere. You're seeing that everywhere.
And so Daphne considers a moratorium after the 240 unit colonnade apartments were approved. Palladian apartments. Nor was the 260 units added to the apartment inventory at the Belforest Villas in 2019, or the 80 unit addition currently being built at the Palladian. It wasn't the 56 units proposed at the intersection of Pilot Road and Daphne Avenue either.
That's like 700 units.
Yeah. So seeing as we don't have the sewage infrastructure to support the people that are flushing the commodes now, I can understand a moratorium on it until their infrastructure catches up. They can't do it arbitrarily, you understand. They have to have a good reason for it. And an environmental concern is a great reason.
And which is the same thing in Fairhope.
I think the ICMA would agree with me. Jesus and Mary and Joseph, why don't you just make a strategic 20-year plan for development
and stick
line out
with the plan?
We did
with the plan.
So when our current county administrator was the county planner, we spent 5 years and $350,000 coming up with Envision Baldwin 2035, and it became the comprehensive plan. In 2010, when the straw man and these other catalyst clowns came in doing the bidding of Baldwin County Sewer Service, that's when we started having all these problems.
How about that?
They repealed the comprehensive plan, and we went back to the subdivision regulations that were in place when my granddaddy was on the county commission in 1981.
They have done that in Fairhope. They're about to do it for the third time. And the number one person that violates their ordinances and their comprehensive plan is Fairhope themselves, just like with the electrical substation in the residential area. I mean, come on, man. Another thing in the Lagniappe this week, those of you that are following the mayor's race, I believe that is August 24th. That's right upon us, so you're going to have a lot of politics thrown your way next week. But if you live in Mobile, you need to be voting, so get your Lagniappe. As also in Lagniappe is a big spread on high school football. I believe everybody really enjoyed that. So
I did.
Be sure to get a Lagniappe. The only other thing I have, Harry, is the there's one particular lawsuit in Fairhope that's huge. It's been going on forever, and no one has paid any attention to it at all. And now Mr. Elliott has just handed a golden key to an attorney, and we're going to be talking about that suit later when I can talk about it. But Elliott really stuck it to the city of Fairhope over this one. I don't even think Fairhope understands it yet. The last thing is that I want to mention is you've got that up on the screen. The Act removes Fairhope's wetlands ordinances outside city limits, and this is what I'm talking about. They have been suing and litigating people outside the city limits, and some of those cases are pending. And here they are now. Boom! They don't have any authority whatsoever outside the city, and they spent all the money on the lawsuit. So, you know.
Geez, if you only had home rule, you could have extraterritorial jurisdiction and take care of stuff like that. But, you know, Alabama.
Oh, it's going to be a total mess for people on both sides of that position, I can assure you. Elliott has done a tremendous amount of damage with that decision. The only other thing I got, Harry, is, of course, our executive director of ethics, Tom Albritton. We have yet to hear anything from Mr. Albritton, and the newspapers aren't covering it yet hard, but I kind of lean in the way that what you said, Raines, is that as soon as this comes out, like a lawsuit filed against Regions or a lawsuit filed against Mr. Albritton, then maybe it will break the news. But it just goes to show you how deplorable the situation is in Alabama when the executive director of ethics is skimming off a trust that he's supposed to be overseeing. Can't get any worse than that.
Yet. Can't get worse than that yet.
Yet.
Not yet. Remember, today is the worst day of your life so far.
So far.
Right.
All right, so I thought we'd do a different kind of outro this time and just let it spool. So you guys have a good weekend.
Amendment 3113, and ask that it be reported by the number.
The clerk will report.
Senator from Alabama, Mr. Tubberville, proposes amendment number 3113.
Thank you very much. Believe it or not, people back home actually listen sometimes to what we say here. To some local leaders across the country, the far left rally cry of defund the police is not just a D.C. rhetoric. They're actually acting on it. More than 80% of law enforcement in America is conducted by state and local police departments. 80%. These men and women are community heroes. We should invest in all of them. But local leaders across the country have decided the woke thing to do is cancel their city's police force. My amendment is pretty simple. If your city council wants to defund their police, don't expect the federal government to make up the difference. The American taxpayers in Alabama have to pick up the tab for local leaders in Oregon and Minnesota who value the woke defund the police movement over their own community safety. I call on my colleagues to support our law enforcement by voting yes for this amendment. Opposing my amendment is a vote in support of defunding the police and against the men and women in blue.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Madam President.
Senator from New Jersey.
I am so excited. This is perhaps the highlight of this long and painful and torturous night. This is a gift. If it wasn't complete abdication of Senate procedures and esteem, I would walk over there and hug my colleague from Alabama. And I will tell you right now, thank God, because there's some people who have said that they're members of this deliberative body that want to defund the police, to my horror. And now this senator has given us the gift that finally, once and for all, we can put to bed this scurrilous accusation that somebody in this great esteemed body would want to defund the police. So let all of us, 100 people, not walk, but sashay down there and vote for this amendment and put to rest the lies. And I am sure I will see no political ads attacking anybody here over defund the police. And I would ask unanimous consent to add something else to this obvious bill. Can we add also that every senator here wants to defund the police, believes in God, country, and apple pie? Thank you.
An absolute masterpiece.
The question is on the amendment.
Ask for the yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Blackburn. Mr. Blumenthal.
Well, I don't know if you happened to tune into it last night, but Major League Baseball put on one of the best
to
games
our field of dreams
I've ever seen.
And play ball.
That's some spooky stuff right there.
Man, it was amazing. The intro was fantastic. They even got James Earl Jones to do their top over narrations. absolutely beautiful. Beautiful
Ninth.
creation. Man, the White Sox and the Yankees, they played a fantastic game. In the ninth inning, Chicago was ahead by 1, or by 3, actually. What's his name? Big number 99 for the Yankees. I forget his name. He's the guy that Jose Altuve shamed so bad. Knocked a 3-run dinger into the corn, tied it up. They scored to go ahead, went up by 1. The Chicago comes back on the mound, final at-bat of the game, and dings a 2-run homer to win it. It was amazing. I don't watch baseball anymore. I don't watch sports anymore. But I said, you know what? This is a pretty cool game, and I'm going to watch it. And by God, they did not fail to deliver. Not only did Fox Sports put on a fantastic game with all the Field of Dreams stuff, but it was an absolutely fantastic baseball game. And thankfully, a Yankee saver lost another one, and I was pretty happy about that because I hate the Yankees. But it was absolutely a phenomenal ball game. The best ninth inning of baseball I have seen in a decade.
You're here. All right, man. Well, maybe next year we'll get to go.
Hopefully.